Hey there YouTube fans, AC Productions here, and today I'm going to be showing you on how to clean your fuel injectors. In this video I'll be showing you on how to do that. Alright, let's get started. Let me show you the parts that you need to do to clean out your fuel injectors. And by the way, I would suggest do not get any of that fuel injector cleaner for your motorcycle, because that's technically not even proven that it would actually clean your fuel injectors. The real proper way to clean your fuel injectors is to remove them from your bike and physically clean them. With Carb Choke cleaner would be the best way to clean out your fuel injectors, because when you put that stuff through your tank, it's going to go through your system, your fuel, and all that other stuff. It could possibly damage and cause harm to your bike. So, and second, you don't even know if they're really doing its job, if it's really cleaning your fuel injectors. So by removing it and putting it, hooking up to a 12-volt battery and testing them out, you can actually run the carb cleaner through it, and you could see if they're properly spraying. If it's not spraying, you could run the cleaner through it a few times, and that should get rid of all the gunk or anything that's in there, and then you'll get a proper spray. And that's pretty much, honestly, guys, the only way to really clean out your fuel injectors. So don't believe the hype about putting fuel injector cleaner into your bike. I would suggest definitely don't do that. All right, so let's get started. Let me show you the stuff that you need to do this fuel injection cleaning. Okay, so first things first, we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this triangle plastic piece, which is going to be one screw right here and one screw right over there. Now don't forget, as you remove the screws off of your bike, don't forget your little Ziploc bag to put your screws in. If you were to tip over your screws from somewhere, they'll all fall on the floor, but having this little guy will save you on looking for screws. And pretty much after removing this triangle piece on this side, you want to make sure that you remove the triangle piece on the other side. So same thing, so make sure that you remove both this side and the other side. Now after that, you're going to remove the passenger seat, this little panel right here, and the driver's seat. Okay, after we remove all that, next what we're going to do is we're going to remove the tank cover, which is up here. Now, depending on yours, if you still have the stock one, you're going to have to remove a bolt that's going to be on top. I'll show you in a second. And then a few screws over here and the two over here in the back. So there's going to be some screws here at the bottom you're going to need to remove, and then over here in the front. So the one in the front, it looks like this right over here. So the screw is actually located right in there. Screw in there. Then there's going to be some screws over here on the side, and then one screw here, and the same thing on the other side. So whatever you do on one side, you want to make sure you repeat it on the other side to remove your tank cover. Okay, now that you have your gas tank cover removed, the bolts that we're going to need to remove now is going to be these two right over here. So these two, and then these two right over here. So you can see one right there and one over there. So those are going to be the two bolts, or the four bolts that we're going to need to remove so we could actually get underneath the gas tank. Okay, now that you got all those screws removed, now this is going to be the tricky part. Now you're going to have to move the tank towards the back if possible. That also depends on how much gas you have in your tank. If you happen to have close to empty, that would be most preferable to be working on this project, is when you don't have that much gas in the tank. But if you have close to full like I do, your tank's going to be on the heavy side. So you want to make sure that you don't put any stress on the lines when you move your tank back. Move it towards the back and pretty much kind of rest it on top of the air box for the time being. But if you happen to have a rod or something, you want to also make sure that you're careful when working on this part, because if your tank happens to fall over, it's gonna kind of all the gas lines and everything are gonna rip off of the tank, and you definitely don't want that, because there are some connectors that are with some fittings on there. So let me prop up the tank, and then let me show you what's underneath. Okay, so as you can see, this is how I have the gas tank propped up. I kind of used the hammer because I think the hammer was the best length to hold up the tank. Now here's how the underneath of the tank looks like. That's your fuel pump. So we're going to be tapping into this hose right here, which is going to from your fuel pump. All right, so I would say instead of working with your gas tank propped up like so, like I have here, we're going to actually remove the gas tank from the bike and work on it that way. That way this will eliminate any fuel from constantly spilling out of the fuel line, which is right over here. So at this point, you want to make sure you put lots and lots of paper towels in this area, just because when we do disconnect from our fuel pump, there will be some gas coming out of that area. So we want to make sure that there's no gas going to be falling at any of these other components. So make sure that you fill this whole area with paper towels, so when the gas does come out, it goes onto the paper towels and not onto the components of your engine. Let me show you what you're going to need to do to disconnect your fuel tank from the bike. Starting off with these little clips right here. You could pretty much use your fingers to just pinch them. So just pinch them like so and bring them down. If you're not able to do so, you could get some needle nose pliers or regular pliers. Pinch it like this and then bring it down. So do this for both ends. One right over here and one over there. As soon as you move down your clips, this one and that one, now we're going to go ahead and remove the main one, which is right over here from the fuel pump. At this point, you want to make sure that you are holding the tank and that it's not going to move from side to side, because if you do drop the tank, it's going to rip these hoses right off and the connector from the fuel pump, because that could be a very costly piece, especially this one right over here that's connected to the fuel pump, because that does use a clip that you're going to need to do to remove. So as of right now, you want to make sure that you are holding your gas tank as you remove this clip. So let me show you how to remove the clip and remove your gas tank altogether from your bike. Like I said, make sure you have a lot of paper towels here to catch any fuel that does come out from the fuel lines. So I'll try to do the best I can on trying to get a good clear shot for you guys on this. So to remove the clip, let me go from the other side. Like I said, you want to make sure you're holding the tank while doing this, because you definitely don't want your tank to fall over when removing this clip. I'm going to also be using another form of light. So sorry guys if the light's moving around, because it is on my forehead so I can see better. Alright, so pretty much there is this orange clip here. Now to remove the clip, there's going to be a little arm on this side and a little arm on that side. What you want to do is kind of separate the arms so that the clip can come off. And now at the same time, when you do this, you want to make sure you're very gentle on this piece, because you definitely do not want this piece to break. There we go. Alright, so now that we got this little orange piece off. Okay, so it looks like that orange piece does not come off because it is connected to the plastic in the back, as you can see right there. So at this point, what we're going to do is you're going to press on these two kind of buttons right here. There's a button right over here on this side, and there is one on the other side. What you can do is press them together, and then we're going to go ahead and remove the fuel line from the gas pump. I had to really press on it really hard over here and over here. Once you do that, you just go ahead and pop it out and pull it out like so. Right away, catch it so not all the fuel starts coming out, pouring like crazy. As you can see, it did come out a little bit, but that's okay. Alright, so now that we have it out, you're going to start smelling gas pretty much right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab one of these paper towels and stuff the hole so that no other much more gas comes out. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this connector, and then we're going to remove these two hoses. This is how this will come off, but like I said, it wasn't able to come off because obviously on there good, so you can just leave that there. Okay, so let me go ahead and actually, we will remove this clip first. Now to do so, let me see if I can get a better view for you guys on how to remove it. But pretty much, if I remove this orange piece, there is an arm here and an arm here, and the same thing like this other one. You want to squeeze it together and pop it out. Okay, so now that we got the fuel line right here already disconnected and the hose already pulled out, now we want to get off this connector right here to the fuel pump. So let me see if I can shine the light in there a little bit better so you guys can kind of see. Now if you see right there, there's a little tab. Now there's a tab on this side, and then there is another tab on this side as well. So that tab is right there. So to unclip it, what you're going to do is you're going to press on both tabs and then pretty much squeeze it. So squeeze both tabs and then pull down on the connector. Okay, so when you do squeeze on both sides, it might be a little bit hard, but just try to do the best you can. As you can see, I already had pulled it out, but I just wanted to show you. So once you squeeze it really good here, just go ahead and pull it out like so. So here's your connector for your fuel pump. Okay, going to go ahead and put that off to the side. And then next we're going to do is we're going to remove these two lines up here. So just go ahead, once you get the little clips down far enough, just going to go ahead and pull both of these down. It might be a little bit hard because they are already kind of like on there. I've never removed them, so on yours it'll be the same thing. So just try to do the best you can and wiggling them around and pulling them off. Okay, so I pretty much found a pretty good way on removing them. I tried pulling on them like downwards and they would not budge at all. But I found out if I twisted it, it actually comes out a little bit easier. So just go ahead and just twist back and forth until they come off. Like so. Here's one. And same thing with the other one. Just twist back and forth, or side to side, I mean, until that comes off too. And that's how you remove those pieces. Now it's pretty much safe to remove your gas tank from your bike. At the same time, get another piece of paper towel and a rubber band and make sure that you cover this up. And also don't tip your gas tank forward. If anything, tip it backwards so this is kind of facing up, so that way no more gas leaks out. And then for the gas tank, this is pretty much how I have it off to the side. And I have it tipped upward this way, so that way no fuel comes out of the little spout that's on the other side, which I had wrapped with a piece of with shop towel. So I do almost have a full tank of gas in there. So you pretty much want to do the same. Do not lay your tank facing down, because that piece where the hose connects to is plastic. And if you lay this tank down flat, chances are that plastic L-shaped tube is going to break. And that's going to be a costly one. So definitely do not do it. Do not lay your tank flat. Okay, so now that we got the fuel tank out of the way, as you can see, there is Dixie. She wants to be YouTube famous, so she keeps on popping in my video shots. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove our fuel rail. Now to remove the fuel rail to get to the fuel injectors, as you can see right about there, let me get this connector out of the way so you guys can see a little bit better. You have to remove these two screws, because these two screws are holding down your fuel rail. So this screw right over here and this screw right over here. So let's go ahead and remove those two screws, and then we're going to remove our fuel rail, which is a very small tiny little rail that's right over here. And then right next to that are a fuel injector here and a fuel injector there. But let's go ahead, remove these two screws, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I just want to show you guys, even though it shows that it's a star style screw, it's actually really hard to get your screwdriver in there because of the air box, which is right here. You're not really able to get to the screws to remove it. So luckily, besides it being a Phillips style, it's actually a bolt, so you could actually use an open end wrench, and we're going to be using an 8mm open end wrench to get the screws and take them off. So just get your open end wrench and then loosen them up and take out the bolts. Okay, right when you loosen the bolts, you're not going to be able to remove it because the airbox is still kind of in the way. So what you're going to do right now is, after you loosen both of them, there's a zip tie right here which is holding all this wiring. Go ahead, cut that zip tie, and this will allow you to have a little bit more wiggle room to actually get the bolts out. Okay, so now that you got you already cut the zip tie that's here, and if you have any other zip ties holding anything else, make sure you cut those so you actually have some wiggle room and able to loosen it and get this out. Now before we actually remove the fuel rail to get to the fuel, well, pretty much once you remove the fuel rail, you're going to be removing the fuel injectors altogether. Now, but before we do all that, you want to make sure that you get some tape and mark your fuel injector. Now, as you can see on mine, I do have a power commander. That's why you see the connectors here. But on yours, if you don't have a power commander, this is actually going to be plugged into here, and this silver one's going to be plugged into this side. So what you want to do is get some tape or something that you can mark your fuel injectors. You want to make sure that you put your fuel injectors back where you originally took them out. Okay, it's just a little bit hard to see on what I wrote, but pretty much what I wrote, as you can see, I have a tape on this side and I got a tape on the block. Same thing, tape on the block and tape on the connector from the fuel injector. So what I wrote on this side, I wrote L1 for left 1. Same thing on the tape here, I wrote left 1. Then over here on this side, I wrote right 2. And same thing here, I put right 2. So R2, R2, L1, L1. You could pretty much write however you want to, whatever you want to put under, just for your reference on, you know, what the fuel injector plug went where on each side. Even though there's 2, you could kind of get confused that you might mistakenly put this one with that one. But this pretty much eliminates that kind of confusion. So you can put whatever you want just so you could differentiate what goes where. All right, so now that I already did that, I'm gonna go ahead and pop out the fuel rail with injectors on there. As you can see, the fuel injectors are right here, kind of hard to see, but as soon as I get the whole fuel rail system out, I could show you and you'll see how it looks like. Oh, one thing I also forgot to mention, before you actually pop the fuel rail out of there, make sure you disconnect your fuel injector plugs or the connectors to the fuel injector. So it's pretty easy to disconnect them. It's just this little tab right here. Just push it down and then pull it out. So we got that one out, and same thing with this one. Just push that little tab and then pull it out. So it comes out fairly easy. Okay, so now that we got both of those out of the way, now I just noticed this right now, which I also wanted to show you guys. There is another plug down here. Not sure if you guys could see. Let me see if I can move some of these wires and zoom in a little bit more. Okay, I guess about there. All right, so there is another plug, and the plug is right there. Now to disconnect that plug, there's that little tab right there. That little tab right there that I'm pointing to right here. Just push it down and then take out the plug over there. I believe that this is your throttle position sensor located over here. So it's going to be kind of a tight fit to get your fingers in there, but try to do the best you can on taking it out. If anything, I may have to probably just remove the fuel injectors and the rail, and it'll probably be a lot easier to get that plug out. Okay, it was a little bit tricky to actually get the fuel rail with the fuel injectors out, but I did. But I wanted to show it to you guys so you could be very careful upon doing this. I noticed that when I started moving it out, that there's actually on those two bolts that were over here, the ones that go right over here, if you see that little collar right there, there was one on this side and one on that side. When I popped it out, that little collar actually fell on the floor somewhere. Hopefully I didn't lose it, but this one luckily fell right there. Secondly, there is a little rubber grommet that goes in the hole. As you can see, this one is missing. It's actually right there. If you guys can see it, but it's pretty much right there. Luckily it fell right there. This one was about to fall somewhere else, but I was luckily able to save it. So that's a little grommet right there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this piece. Make sure you put this off to the side. And then when you put it back, make sure that you put it with the screw. Now let me show you the screws that this came from. I put it over here to the side so you guys can see. So when I pull it out, it also came with a rubber O-ring, which is right over here. So it was like so, and then this part was actually in like this. And then obviously it goes and screws on into that spot. So as you're pulling it out, make sure that you're mindful on this collar and that rubber grommet that's in the hole, so it doesn't happen to you that these parts fall somewhere where you cannot get them, or they fall somewhere and you're out of luck. Alright, so I just pretty much wanted to show you these pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and put these off to the side. Okay, so like I was mentioning to you guys about that little collar that fell on one side. Luckily it fell on this side for me, but the other one actually fell through the motor. And let me show you actually where it actually went. I was looking at the bottom of the bike to see if I could see it anywhere, and it wasn't down there. It didn't even fall on the fairing at the bottom or anything. It actually fell right over here, and I'm super lucky that it actually fell there. I think I'll be able to get it. So if I were to get my camera to see if you guys could see it. Let's see if I get the... Alright, so it's right there. Get the camera up. Actually, let me just get the light shining there. Up there it is, right there. So luckily it fell right there. I am super, I wouldn't say that lucky, but I'm glad it fell somewhere where I could actually try to reach it, put my magnet, and see if I could pull it out or use something to actually get that collar out of there. Okay, so now that I got the little collar back and I actually was able to grab the little small grommet circle, and I already put them back in its spot. As you can see, one right there and one right there. Now right now would be an excellent idea to actually put some tape into the over the hole over here, because you definitely don't want any contaminants getting into that area, because it is a very dirty area and dusty. You definitely don't want anything going in there, because that's where your fuel injectors just came out of, and you definitely don't want any contaminants in there. Okay, now that we got the tape over the fuel injector ports, now here is the fuel injectors themselves with the fuel rail. Now this is pretty much how it looks like, and I could see I already have a contaminant on there. That is so weird on how that stuff even gets on there. But this is pretty much on how your fuel rail, this is a fuel rail, and here's the fuel injectors and how it looks like. Now when removing the fuel injectors and everything from the bike, make sure that you're very careful on not actually bending these parts, because if you bend them, they may not work properly. See if I could zoom in so you guys could actually see the small little tiny holes that are right there that allows the fuel to pass through. Alright, so there we go. That's actually the small little holes. It's able to actually get it to zoom. I don't want to move it too much because I don't want it to get out of focus. But as you could see, that's pretty much where all your fuel comes out of, those little tiny holes. Amazing to see how things so small can do so much. Now to clean them, my suggestion is not to use those fuel injector cleaners, because honestly I don't think those fuel injector cleaners do anything. We're going to take them out and we're just going to hook up a line to here, hook up power to the connector of the fuel injector, and then just clean them out that way. Okay, now before we actually remove the fuel injectors from the fuel rail, just like we did with marking the connectors with the tape, I'm going to do the same thing with the fuel injector. So I'm just going to put some tape around here and mark off where they came from. So obviously the fuel rails was like this, so I'm going to go ahead and mark this one as my L1 and then this one as my R2. But again, you could mark it however you want. You could say this is A, that's B, 1 or 2, whatever will let you differentiate what's what. Okay, so I already marked my fuel injectors as L1 and R2, because that's the way it was right over here, and I had marked this one to be L1 and that's going to be R2. Alright, so now it's okay and safe for me to remove them off of the fuel rail. Now you really don't have to mark the fuel rail with that particular way I just did, just because the fuel rail only goes in one direction anyway. So there is no potential way of actually mixing, the sides out. But you do need to mark these areas. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the fuel injectors. Now to remove the fuel injectors, just go ahead and twist it and pop them out. Just make sure you're careful, and there you go. So, as I can see, I'm already spilling fuel all over the place. Time to clean that up. Okay, so note to you guys, when you take out the fuel injector, I totally forgot about the fuel. As you can see, here is the fuel in the fuel filter, that there is still fuel in here and fuel throughout the whole entire system. So make sure that you have your paper towel when removing the fuel injectors from the fuel rail. Alright, so I found something extremely interesting when looking into the hole of the fuel injector, that there's actually a number imprinted inside the fuel injector. It says 8C inside. So like I said, guys, I'm not sure if that's some type of part number to differentiate the type of fuel injector or whatnot. But if you guys know what the letter and number stands for the fuel injector, leave a comment down below. I'm really curious to see what that means. And then on this one, let me see off camera, this one says 6X. So number 6 and the letter X. Oh, there we go. You could see that one perfectly. So as you can see right there, it says the number 6 and the letter X. So that's on this one. So just wanted to show you that the cool thing I found inside the fuel injectors. Alright, so now let's go and let's get to the testing of the fuel injectors and see how they're working, and to run fuel through them to make sure that they're actually working like they're supposed to. Before we actually go to test out the fuel injectors, we want to make sure that we get the power, the positive and the negative, correct on the fuel injector. And as you can see on the fuel injector, there's the two little tabs right over here. So as you can see, the two tabs right over here. So we want to make sure that we get the positive and negative correct. So in order to do that, we're going to go right back to the bike, and since I already had marked the fuel injector, we could go to that plug and see what's positive and what's negative. So this is my left one is right here for me, and now we're going to go ahead and we're just going to position it like we're going to plug it back in. So it goes in like this. Now we see that on the plug left, the red is positive, so we want to make sure that when we're looking at it, now we know that this side is positive and then the other side is negative. And you want to do the same thing with the other fuel injector. Just temporarily plug it in there, look at the cables, and then correspond to what the cable and the tab are. Alright, so now let's go to the bench and let's put some power to it, and then feed some cleaner or some fuel through this port so it could shoot out through this side and see how its performance is, and to make sure that it's on both fuel injectors that they're both performing at their best and they're both performing equally. Okay, so I had to pretty much go to the automotive parts store, because I needed to get some tubing to clean the fuel injector. They don't really make specific tubing for our little tiny fuel injectors, so I had to go over there, and I brought the fuel injector with me so they could kind of measure the size tubing I needed. So as far as these two are concerned, this one is a 3/8 and a 5/16. And then as far as these two go, I'm not sure exactly on the sizes, but I did get a package. I'll have a link also on the package, and this was pretty much miscellaneous tubing of all different sizes. So besides these two that I got, I also got in the package was this one, and it also comes with a very small diameter one right there, but it's like this small and it's very short. This one was a little bit more flexible. This one's a little bit more on the stiff side. So pretty much you're gonna have to do the same thing if you wanted to clean your injectors. So on this one, this part is going to actually go on this part. Now to get it on there, you want to make sure that you remove the O-ring that's on this part of the fuel injector. So just go ahead and remove it carefully. You make sure you do not want to break this. If you do break it, you're going to have a little bit of a tough time to actually find that specific O-ring for the fuel injector. So once you remove that, this orange piece does not come off. So just go ahead and then slide this part over on the fuel injector. So just go ahead and slide it over like so. Now you'll have pretty much something like this. Zoom out a little bit so you guys can see. So this is what it looks like. So it's pretty much a big diameter going to a very small diameter up to the little straw on this little contraction to clean the fuel injector. The Carb and Choke cleaner actually is another good thing to use to clean out your fuel injectors. So now let's go over to this little setup I got over here. I put some paper towels, and I'll show you right now on what I'm talking about. Okay, so I got my little thing set up, a paper towel just at an L shape, so that way that the carb cleaner just shoots onto the paper there. Alright, so now with this one facing down, like I said, you want to go to the bike and make sure on the connectors. I know maybe some other videos say that these are, doesn't matter what you do, positive or negative, but for me, even though whatever they say, I always like to make sure on my bike, so I don't really go by what they say. So on my connector, since this was the one on the right side, with this facing down, this side is the positive and that side is going to be the negative. So like I said, on your bike, you want to make sure on checking, plugging in the connector and seeing what wire goes to where. Alright, so before we get to that, this is my 12 volt battery supply that I'll be using. And then pretty much what you also want to do is make your own little wire cables to connect to the fuel injector. Now, and this one is just positive and negative cable. At the end, I have spade connectors, and they are both female, which on the battery, as you can see, it's kind of a spade connector, and it's a male over here. And then on this side, I just use really small connectors, and I also put some heat shrink tubing on it, so that when if they were to ever touch, they don't short out the battery or whatever I'm using it for. So you want to do the same thing. Alright, so now that we've gotten that, so now I'm going to go ahead and plug these in. So this side is going to be the positive. Just going to go ahead and slide that in. This side is going to be the negative. Go ahead and slide it in. Alright, so now once you put power to the fuel injector solenoid inside is going to start activating. So before you do that, I'm going to go ahead and connect this to our Carb and Choke cleaner, and this is before I actually start and power it up. And we're just going to aim it there so it could actually spray onto the paper towel. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the positive first, and then I'll plug in the negative. Put that over here. So every time you touch the leads, it's going to actually start turning on the solenoid on the fuel injector. So you want to make sure that you hold on to it, and as you press it, so behind the scenes, I'm holding on to it really good over here, and I'm going to press it over here, and it should spray out on this side. So I'm going to move the camera probably closer over here so you can actually see the spray come out of the fuel injector. Alright, so here I got the camera positioned kind of on the floor, and hopefully you're able to see what's going on. Alright, so here we go. It's gonna be my first time actually doing this, so all I hear is just like a little tapping noise. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that on there, and then I'm gonna spray it. Alright, so there we go. It's actually a lot more is coming out from the fuel injector. So that means that my fuel injector was actually clogged. There was some debris on the inside, so we just cleaned it out. Alright, so plenty of fuel is actually coming out from the, cleaner is coming out from the fuel injector. So now I know that this fuel injector is clean. Now let's move on to the next one. I'm not really going to show you on that one. It's pretty much the same exact process. So that's what you want to do. And also note that when you do this, you want to make sure that you're in a well ventilated area, because this stuff really stinks. Just make sure you do the same process on your next fuel injector. Then I'll show you what to do after that. Okay, now that we already cleaned out both our fuel injectors, now what we're going to do next is we're going to go put back those O-rings. So here's the 2 O-rings that we removed. So let's go ahead and put our O-rings back on. Let's go ahead and put that on like so. And then go ahead and do the same thing with the other fuel injector and put your O-ring back on like so. Alright, at this point also you want to make sure that you check your O-rings to make sure that they're not cracked or anything, and that they're in really good condition. It's a little dirty here because of the hose. Alright, so now that we have cleaned both our fuel injectors, also if you notice that on the fuel injectors it comes this like little plastic piece, you want to make sure that the plastic is in this direction, so horizontal. So you could actually move it. So you just want to make sure the way you're holding it like this, you want to make sure that the little plastic is horizontal. That's pretty much how it was when we removed it from the bike. So it's like this. So if you notice that your thing is a little crooked, just make sure that you straighten it out before you put it back in your bike. So now let's go ahead and put our fuel injectors back into the fuel rail, and then we're going to put it right back into the motorcycle. Okay, so now before we put our fuel injectors on the bike, let's go ahead and let's put this back onto the bike just as a kind of dry fitment, just so you remember which side is what. So pretty much it goes in like so, and I notice, okay, so towards the connector will be my right 2, and away will be my left 1. Alright, so now that I know the placement of where the fuel injectors are going to go, I'm just going to go ahead and put our fuel injectors in. Okay, and to put your injectors back in, all you have to do is, all you have to do is just pretty much press it in. So go ahead, just push it in there in the hole for the fuel rail. Alright, let's go ahead and just, if you need to, just go ahead and give it a few twists. It should go in. Now let's go ahead and install our fuel rail back. Now don't mind that I don't have the air box in right now. It's just because I'm doing multiple videos. I'm shooting multiple videos and showing multiple things. So in your bike you are going to have your air box here. Alright, so now let's go ahead and remove the tape. So because we are going to put our injectors back. Remove that. Alright. And let's go ahead and install our fuel rail and everything in. So okay, so pretty much you want to get this and slide it all underneath like so. Make sure that you're careful with the fuel injectors that you do not bend them. If you bend them, you will need to buy some brand new ones. Alright, so let me move the camera just for a little bit more closer view. Okay, so hopefully this is a little bit better view for the fuel injectors. So here are the ports that we need to make sure that the fuel injectors go into. One right over here and one right over there. Alright, so make sure that you take your time on putting the fuel injectors in, because like I said, you don't want to bend the fuel injectors whatsoever. So now that they're both seated in properly, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our screws back in. So here is the screws that we had removed, and also with the little collar that goes over here on this spot. Okay, so I wanted to show you on how the screws go in, so I could kind of get in there so you could see a little bit better. Alright, so now that we're in here, you can hold it. Alright, so pretty much we're going to put the screw in, but the collar goes in between this part and the fuel rail. Alright, so the collar goes right in between, like this spot. So right where my finger is, that's where you want to have the collar. So let's go ahead and put the one screw in. And it's going to be kind of tricky, but I'm going to put the camera off to the side. But you want to make sure that you hold on to the collar while you slide the screw in. And then once you get it in there, go ahead and tighten down the screw. And you want to do that for both sides. So you want to make sure you do it on this side and on that side. Okay, now that we got the 2 screws already tightened, these 2, it doesn't have to be extremely tight, just make sure that they're snug, and maybe just a little bit of a turn. Next, we want to go ahead and plug in our fuel injectors, so one over here, one over there, and then don't forget your sensor over here, don't forget to plug in that one. So let's go ahead and plug all 3. Okay, now that you already installed and plugged in your fuel injectors, you could go ahead and remove your tape. And then also don't forget to zip tie any of the wires that you had clipped on before. So there was a zip tie over here, and then I had to zip tie over here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, now that we have everything situated there, next what we're going to do is we're going to grab our gas tank and go ahead and sit it on the top and then start plugging in all of our connectors. Okay, with all your shop towels, this is how it should look like, well covered. So in case any fuel were to spill out, it'll spill out to the shop towels. Okay, now that we got the tank on here, but not all the way on, so first we're going to do is we're going to grab our fuel injector plug right here. Actually, let's get to our plug for the fuel pump. Okay, which is right over here. Hopefully you guys can see it. At the same time, I'll go ahead and put a few more paper towels actually right in this area. I don't want any fuel to be leaking out and spilling. Alright, so go ahead and put it right there. Alright, so next we're going to do is we're going to grab our plug, which is right over here, and connect it to our gas tank. At the same time, you want to make sure that you're securely holding down your gas tank on doing so. So let's go ahead and plug that in and make sure that you hear the click when you're doing so. Okay, now that we heard the click, we know that it's securely in. Next we're going to do is we're going to grab our fuel line, which is right over here, and we're going to slide that in. Make sure that when you put your fuel line in that you hear the click so you know that it's securely in place. And at the same time, if you want to hold on to the little bracket to make sure that it doesn't move around. Alright, so there was the click right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this brown bracket over this connector to make sure that everything is secured in place. Make sure that you hear the click on the brown connector as well. Alright, there we go. 2 clicks are in, so we know that everything is securely in place. Okay, once we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to connect our 2 breather hoses, which is go in the front of the tank. Alright guys, hopefully you can see this video since I'm not that close by the camera to really see on the video itself. Alright, so now that we got everything over here connected, we're going to go ahead and connect our breather hoses, which goes right over here at the front of the tank. Make sure guys when you're doing this so you're holding securely the tank. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and put the bigger one in first. So let's go ahead and slide that in like so. Make sure that it goes all the way to the top of the tank right here, or pretty much the bottom of the tank. Get your little clip that's right here and slide it in and put it over on this side. So just go ahead and pinch the 2 ends and then just slide it in its place. So like so, and then go ahead and get the smaller tube and do the same thing. I know it's pretty much hard to see from that angle on what I'm doing, but pretty much do the same thing. Just grab the little clip end and slide that one over. Alright, now that everything is already securely in place, right now I'm just going to set the tank off to the side right here. Now I'm going to really bolt everything in right now because I want to make sure that everything's good and there's no leaks with the system of the fuel filter. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put another paper towel here underneath the fuel filter itself, and we're going to set the tank down, make sure that it's flat, and test out the system. So that means pretty much turning on the bike, turning on the motorcycle. So just make sure that everything is okay, and make sure not to pinch your fingers when you're putting the tank flat. We're going to go ahead and we're going to turn on the motorcycle and check to see if there's any leaks or anything on the line. So let's go ahead and do that. Now note, when starting up your motorcycle, make sure that you are in a ventilated area. If you are in a garage, make sure you open the garage just a little bit, just to let all that exhaust fumes out the door pretty much. So do not do this with the garage door closed because of the carbon monoxide. Alright, so let's go ahead, let's go to the bike and let me start it up. I'm going to go ahead and start the bike just for a few seconds and then turn it off. Okay, so right now everything is looking pretty good. I didn't see anything squirt out from this area. So I'm going to go ahead and move the tank and see if there's any leaks on the fuel pump. The lines are good. There's nothing. Here's the paper. As you can see, there's no fuel on it at all. So that means that there is no leaks in the line. Everything's good. So now next would be to put everything in its spot and its place. Okay, so everything's looking good. Make sure the cables, there's nothing pinching cables or anything. Everything's zip tied good. Alright, so let's go ahead and install our tank back on the motorcycle. Alright guys, now that we have the gas tank securely in place with the 2 bolts there and the 2 bolts there in the front. Now it actually props up the gas tank a little bit more, up, like I was telling you. And as you can see, there is nothing hitting the underneath of the fuel pump. There is plenty of space there. Okay, after you install your gas tank, next what you're going to do is going to put your cover back on top of the gas tank. Okay, after you put your fuel tank cover back onto your fuel tank, next is pretty easy. Next we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put your driver's seat back on, put your panel that goes right here between the driver and the passenger seat on, put your passenger seat back on, and then finally go ahead and put your triangle panels back on. Alright guys, well that pretty much concludes the video on how to clean and check your fuel injectors. If you guys found this video helpful, please hit that like button. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you haven't yet subscribed, don't forget to subscribe. That way you guys are up to date with my latest video. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. And thank you for watching.